Welcome to InfoHub Extended. Today, the GAWU hosted a seminar entitled Sugar Too Big to Fail at the Grand Coastal Inn at La Rue. One of the featured guests was Minister of State Joseph Harmon, who outlined the coalition government's strategy for the sugar industry. We now bring you that speech.
Mr. Chairman, the theme for today's conference is Sugar Too Big to Fail. The phrase too big to fail means, or may be applied to an entity or business that is so important that its principals must take measures to prevent it from going bankrupt or out of existence. I trust that this is what the framers of the theme had in mind when they decided to apply this phrase to today's conference. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is any entity in Guyana that suits this definition, it is Gaisuco, and by extension, the sugar industry. Mr. Chairman, in 2015, when the APNU AFC government acceded to office, we found Gaisuco with a debt of $82 billion. In US, $82 million of Gaisuco's reserves invested in the sugar estate, in the Skeldon sugar estate, and $112 million in loans committed to its extension and development. This project failed to achieve its most basic objectives, was operationally inefficient, and in the process of its implementation, created a drag on the other sections of the sugar industry. This, coupled with high levels of inefficiency across the rest of the industry, with huge declines in both cane yield and factory recovery, resulted in severe financial difficulties. In fact, the industry only having to survive because of massive injections of subsidies, some $32 billion from 2015 to date. Being faced with these realities, which we inherited as a government, we made a decision that this important national institution and the largest single employer in Guyana, we needed to take a closer look at it and a careful consideration and a carefully considered policy to ensure its survival and a return to viability. This was clear to us because besides the reports, writings, political back and forth, statistics, numbers, and technical arguments, we were dealing with lives, real human situations that translated into day-to-day bread and butter issues. We therefore took the prudent course of action to appoint a commission of inquiry into the Guyana Sugar Corporation in July of 2015 to make recommendations on charting the way forward and to returning the industry to financial viability. All of this was undergirded by a daunting international political economic reality in which after 2009, Guyana was forced to sell its sugar on the world market at prices that were lower than the cost of production. In addition, Guyana's main market for sugar, the European Union, on September 30th, 2017, abolished the quota system, effectively eliminating our last guaranteed market for sugar. In the midst of these inescapable challenges, Mr. Chairman, we approved the appointment of 10 competent persons on the issues of sugar under the chairmanship of Mr. Vibert Parvatan. This commission spent months investigating, consulting, and conversing with the widest cross-section of the Guyanese community, both local and overseas, who were knowledgeable about sugar. The trade unions, namely GAU, NASI, and the Ghana Labor Union, the Cane Farmers Association, individual cane farmers, executives of Gaisuco, managers, department heads, and other categories of workers from all sugar estates, representatives of the local business community, international organizations, accountants, economists, engineers, agronomists, consultants, and entrepreneurs, research staff of the Ministry of Agriculture also. The commission, after having met for all this time, came up with certain recommendations. And some of the key recommendations made by that commission were that the corporation should be privatized within 3 years, that a serious evaluation of all diversification options be conducted to avoid total reliance on sugar for Gaisuco's revenues. An evaluation on the options for Gaisuco should be done to amalgamate the Wales and Eifert estates and assign all their cane to the Eifert factory, which was operating at 50% capacity. The corporation should divest itself, of the Skeldon estate. The estates of Albion and Rosal are to be amalgamated, and the factory at Rosal is to be closed. The report also highlighted that 60% of Gaisuco's drainage and irrigation infrastructure was in a dilapidated condition. So, Mr. Chairman, these were the results, the findings of a commission of inquiry done after all of these levels of consultation. This report, after it was completed, was widely circulated to the unions that are involved, to the political opposition, and to many other persons across this country. It was laid in the National Assembly, and of course it is still to be debated, but it's laid in the National Assembly. I know that that's a sore point with some of my colleagues in the National Assembly. But, Mr. Chairman, the implementation of these recommendations was not something which we did automatically. The government asked Gaisuco, after the Commission of Inquiry made those recommendations, to come up with a plan of action based on these recommendations as to how we will deal with these issues. After many days, backward and forward, in fact many weeks, Gaisuco came up with a plan of action, how they will deal with these issues. The plan was aggressively interrogated by the cabinet, and eventually a document was put out. That document itself became the basis of the government's position, which was laid on the table with the unions, with the political opposition, with the representatives of the estates. And I see here a document as part of the conference material that was put out by GAU. This was, in fact, GAU's response to the government's position at that conference. Started in December of 2016, and I see this one is dated February of 2017. But that was an important conference. That was what we call sitting at the table. Put your issues on the table and let us discuss it. GAU put their issue on the table. NASI, in fact, said that they concurred with the position of GAU. The political opposition said they needed to have a study done. They never put anything on the table. So what we had on the table was a position by the government and a position by GAWU. The government then looked at these positions, put them together, extracted the main issues out of them together, and prepared a state paper, which was laid in the National Assembly. That state paper, Mr. Chairman, spoke to several issues which we have to deal with here. It spoke to the question of what we're going to do with sugar, the future of sugar. What we were going to do about the workers, the need to retain workers at the merged sugar factories. That the government, it said, was cognizant of the invaluable contribution of the sugar industry over the years. And so that paper laid out the steps that were to be taken in this regard. Apart, as I said, apart from what GAWU was put on the table, this document, there's nothing else coming from anybody else other than letters in the newspaper. Mr. Chairman, I want to posit that if we are to advance as a nation, we have to put our issues on the table and get it interrogated. We cannot wait on a conference or whatever form of conference it is, or a letter to the letter to the editor, to put our issues there. Study the issues and put it on, let us agree, let us discuss that. And I believe that this has always been the focus of the government, that we have to discuss these issues. Sugar is not something we take lightly. The issue of the condition of our workers, of sugar workers, is not something we take very lightly. And so when the issue of severance came up, we invited the union again to consultation, GAWU and NASI to consultations in 2018 on the question of severance and what were some of the issues as it related to the workers. Again at the table, sitting with the cabinet in the cabinet room, and GAWU and NASI made their positions very clear. I must say at every point along the way that there has been aggressive representation on behalf of the workers by the union. And not only the unions were there, the representatives from the factories, the estates were also present. And they made their positions clear as well. So, Mr. Chairman, whatever shape or form we arrive at has always been, consultation has always been the bedrock of what we do as a government. And so, Mr. Chairman, in addition to these consultations, and arising out of some of the foundations of the state paper, a special purposes unit for sugar was established with some very clear guidelines as to what is to be done about divestment, what is to be done about sugar lands, and what is to be done about the valuation of these assets, and so on going forward. Additionally, it was made clear by His Excellency the President in a statement which he made as recent as Friday last, that the estates, the lands of the estate, or what he called the family jewels, were not going to be sold off for nothing. That there has to be a clear, transparent process by which these things will be done. So that after a valuation by PricewaterhouseCoopers, that there has to be a system of dealing with these lands. This is the government's view, Mr. Chairman, on the future of the sugar industry. We are of this view that the industry can survive. And we wish to posit here that there is a distinct clarity on the way that the government has dealt with and is dealing with the future of the sugar industry. We are committed to ensuring that this industry survives. Mr. Chairman, with those two remarks, I want to thank you for providing me with this opportunity to clarify government's position and to ensure that the conference at least gets another view, and that the government under President Granger, the entire cabinet, that you want to wish this conference here a success and to commit to continue working with the union and all stakeholders to ensure that this sugar industry survives and that the lives and livelihood of those workers who continue to be in the industries and those who will be employed when the industry is divested in a certain way, that we will continue to ensure that the livelihood of Guyanese, the Guyanese worker, is our paramount consideration.
This has been another program of InfoHub Extended. Thanks for watching. Do join us again.